Hey everybody, this is prisoner 830506 reporting from my new prison cell at Prison 1, a private contract prison. And this is modeled after the cell I had at Facility 5, minus that little party light. Party light was something I had before my imprisonment that I just brought into the cell, along with all the other junk that you see there. Anyway, I was going to wait for this update to celebrate my 4-year anniversary of being barefoot and shackled and now imprisoned. But I've been in this cell for 3 months now. Maybe. Well, not this cell. I've been in Prison 1 for about 3 months. I believe about 3 months now. So I thought we might as well update you on what's going on. We changed the channel name, so there's probably some of you are confused as why it went from Facility 5 to Prison 1. Probably the same as, when I switched it from Shackled Bare Feet to Facility 5. So there's some kind of explanation required here. So I've left Facility 5. I'm currently imprisoned at Prison 1. That's why you're seeing me double shackled here, because my warden wants me in double shackles, that being Amy, my ex-girlfriend / mistress in an enslavement contract / trusted third party from Facility 5 / warden of Prison 1. So this is my cell. This is the kneeling chair is my new chair that I have to sit on. She took away my my office chair that you saw in that previous video. And she has me in these double shackles. She calls them punishment shackles, but they're really control shackles. She wants the key to my freedom, right? And as you can see, this chain between my ankles by these heavier shackles are very much shorter than the chain that I'm used to walking in, right? I've been wearing those silver shackles that are welded on from Facility 5 for about 3 years, I believe, now, okay? So those are my everyday life. That's not special anymore, right? Those are just, I'm going to be wearing those for the rest of my life. So when she puts these on me, she holds the key to my freedom. She knows that every step I make is going to be limited by that shorter chain, and that she has full control over it, right? As long as she holds the key, she holds my freedom of movement, basically. So it excites her, and I want her to be excited, so I'm not complaining, just that I really don't like this short chain. So, and the added weight. These are very heavy shackles, and in addition to the chains and shackles that I'm already wearing, it's not the most comfortable situation. Sorry if the chain sounds are loud. I'm sitting on that chair you see in this video right now, and my chains are resting across the metal part in the back, and every time I move my feet, it's dragging that chain across the metal. The two chains, actually, right now. So, anyway. So, a quick explanation of Prison 1. The Prison 1 is owned by Amy. We sold my house, any of my extra equipment, and, my vehicle, since I'm never going to be driving again, since I'm permanently barefoot, shackled, and in prison now for a life sentence. We sold all that stuff off while I was in prison at Facility 5 to accommodate the new prison, the construction of the new prison. Now, don't get too excited. This is not a fully functional prison yet. Okay, we have 2 buildings. One is the one I'm in right now, my prison cell that was constructed while I was still imprisoned at Facility 5. And then another building that's basically being used for storage right now, but we're going to be converting that into the holding cell, basically, or, punishment cells. I served a little over a month chained up in that metal box. It's a container, right? And it was not the funnest, because when I got out of prison and I arrived here at the new prison, my cell hadn't been completed yet and hadn't even been delivered. So they built it in a warehouse and they put it on a truck and delivered to the location. So I was very excited when this cell showed up, especially as awesome as it is, right? I mean, they really matched most of the things that are from my cell at Facility 5, my lower level luxury cell, and some of it's even better. Like the way they did this desk. The desk, this bottom part you see here, is almost identical to Facility 5, but the top of the desk has the plexiglass that covers the entire frame instead of inside the middle like it was at Facility 5. So when I was resting my hand on the edge, it was like on the metal, and it got gummy. It just wasn't the best situation. It wasn't perfectly even. This one, the plexiglass covers the entire top, and they did a little bit better on the lighting on the top part of the desk. And I'll show that eventually at patreon.com/facility5, which I've been posting to. You might not have seen videos on YouTube. You might have thought I just wasn't doing this anymore, that I was out of prison and I had a job or whatever. No, I've been imprisoned and permanently shackled and barefoot for this entire time. I've been posting every single week at patreon.com/facility5. And now under my new life sentence, I will be posting there for the rest of my life. So be sure to go over there and check that out, catch up with everything. But I'm going to kind of give you some basic information of what's happened in the past year or so. Well, let's start from the beginning. So if you're new here and it's the first video you've seen or whatever, I started this project as Shackled Bare Feet. This channel is called Shackled Bare Feet because that was the focus, which is still the focus, obviously. I started this because I was going to make a movie about a prisoner that was basically put into isolation, a solitary confinement, barefoot, shackled, permanently shackled for life, basically, right, in a prison cell, which is basically my life right now, actually, as I am in solitary confinement, being that I'm the only prisoner here, and I don't even have internet yet. So we're working on getting gigabit fiber internet here, but they got to drag it out in the middle of nowhere because the prison is literally located in the middle of the desert. So anyway, I started this project because I wanted to really kind of get in the head of a prisoner who was permanently shackled and imprisoned, basically. I mean, of course, I couldn't replicate all of those things because, I mean, I knew I was going to get the shackles off, so it wasn't really that thing. But mostly the physical aspect, what it would be like, would that even be feasible? I mean, I know they have prisoners that are permanently shackled in, like, Thailand and stuff like that. They're welded on and everything. But I wanted to kind of get an idea of how that character would feel in that situation and the kind of things that they would have to go through adapting to having their feet shackled permanently, right? Never taking off, just day after day, how you would adapt to that situation. And so I did. My original goal was 30 days. After 30 days, I realized that that has some pretty strong ups and downs. Like, I signed a contract with my neighbor to keep me shackled with strict penalties if, he took the tools, so I didn't have tools to remove them. But if I were to free myself from them, then I would have strict penalties on top of it, right? So I didn't have the choice to take them off for that night, for that first 30 days, right? And then I realized that after 30 days that it was very doable. Like, my ankles got used to them after like 5 days a week or so. And while I still had some strong ups and downs, like some days I really wanted them off, I would do anything to get them off because I just couldn't stand having them on my ankles anymore and the chain between my ankles, and they were hurting my ankles and stuff like that. And then other days it was the opposite. Like, I liked the feeling of them. Like, they were hugging my ankles. I mean, they felt good on some days. And that's a situation that brought me to where I'm at now, because on the days that I felt like I liked them, right, and I wanted them on longer, then I signed a contract for longer. We extended my contract to 90 days. And during that 90-day period, a lot happened. I discovered Facility 5 in my research for long-term shackling and kind of talking in some forums and stuff. I met a person who had been shackled for 90 days, 3 months, in a prison called Facility 5, a private contract prison. That's a secret prison. You only know about it if you were invited to be a prisoner there, basically, by an existing prisoner or a former prisoner. And that's where I got my invite from. In the invite, we were talking with my caseworker at Facility 5. I discussed the possibility of doing the vlog and stuff. She did mention that they were expecting a downturn, like they were having more prisoners lined up in the next year to leave the prison than they had signed up to come in. And they thought that might be a good way to do it. I already had a following at that time. maybe kind of gets, allow former prisoners to use my videos as a starting point to start the conversation about, maybe inviting someone else to go to prison, right? They would be able to watch my videos from prison, see what it's like, and make a decision based on that, right? They basically gave me, open. They didn't censor me. They did censor what I could show, which is why you're seeing this part of the cell that you've never seen before in Facility 5, because I was never able to show this side of the cell. Of course, this is different than Facility 5. I didn't have a bunch of junk and stuff like this, right? So, anyway, that was the plan. I signed up for Facility 5. But there was a waiting list, even though they were expecting a downturn, they weren't actually at that point yet. So I went on a waiting list, and they started, I guess, promoting my channel to former prisoners, right? As a possibility to show to people to bring them into the prison. I don't know the numbers. I can't say for sure, but I think it worked because now the wait list got longer, right? And now they were looking at overcrowding a situation possibility. At that point, I was given the option to go on standby, which sounded absolutely terrible. Going into a solitary confinement cell, 4 foot by 8 foot, and just living in that cell until one came available, right? Basically. I did not like that idea. And at the time, Amy, my ex-girlfriend, had taken over my contract, and we were having fun with it, right? So she was technically in charge of me. She was my trusted third party at Facility 5. She could have just said, nope, you're going. There's no more discussion. You're going to prison right now for standby. Luckily, I was able to talk her out of that, along with, like I said, we were having fun with this enslavement and stuff like that, and the shackling, and we were just kind of getting back together, right? So she allowed me to stay out of prison for a little bit longer, and eventually she made the decision that I would go to prison, whether I liked it or not. So I was taken to prison. These shackles, the silver ones, were welded permanently around my ankles. I was put into solitary confinement originally, and then moved to what's called Consolidated Confinement. As I mentioned, there was they were getting more people in than not, and people started feeling like they weren't going to get a cell, so they started coming in on standby, and the standby cells, or the punishment cells as they call them, got filled up, right? So they started packing 3 prisoners to these tiny 4 foot by 8 foot cells, which caused problems in the beginning. There was a humidity issue because it's down underground. There's already kind of like this humid problem down there, and then packing 3 warm-bodied, breathing, sweating prisoners in a tiny space with no ventilation created a problem. So they added dehumidifiers down there, which caused temperature fluctuations. It went from cold to hot. It was really kind of a mess. And because prisoners were getting in fights down there, they implemented a system of chaining us together by our feet. And I'm talking close together. Our ankles are like just a few inches apart by these shackles, right? In a line. So my left ankle would be chained to the right ankle of the prisoner in the middle. His left ankle would be chained to the right ankle of the prisoner to his right, or his left, sorry. So that created a system in Consolidated Confinement that forced prisoners to work together as a team, right? Just to use the bathroom, you had to get their cooperation, because you weren't moving your feet unless they were allowing you to move their feet with yours, right? Because literally inches between our ankles. This created a situation where our feet were constantly in contact, rubbing together, the weight of their feet resting on mine, etc., sole to sole, depending on how we're sitting. We're forced into that position, right? That created, other situations that I'm still addicted to now. When you live in that situation for months at a time, over and over again I spent over 1.5 years in Consolidated Confinement as a whole, not all together. The longest period I was down there, I believe it was 90 days. But that ended up being the reason that I left Facility 5. Not the regular Consolidated Confinement that I'm talking about now, but they expanded it to 5 prisoners per cell, and they also basically they created a suffering currency. So after Facility 5 started growing, right, more prisoners, the overcrowding started, they started adapting their policies and changing the way they imprisoned prisoners. They they converted regular cells into quad cells where 4 prisoners were housed there. They expanded the punishment cells to accommodate 3 prisoners, this consolidated confinement. So now they were able to accommodate more prisoners coming in, and they were, in my opinion, getting greedy, okay? And they just kept piling on new policies and stuff to make it easier for third parties. In Facility 5, you have a trusted third party who's basically in control of your imprisonment to some degree. They can't release you from prison if you've already paid for imprisonment, but they can extend your imprisonment, and they can also choose how you serve your time for the most part. This video right here is from the camera that one of the cameras that we're gonna be using in my cell once we have internet here for Amy to monitor my imprisonment. That's why it's kind of wide angled and kind of distorted. She really liked this view. This chair we ordered was used. It didn't come with wheels, so I put these little wood blocks under it. This is leftover wood from the solar array that I had to build a couple weeks ago, where I was placed on autonomy mode, which is the first time I've actually been allowed to leave my cell without Amy being present, so that I could work outside. Hard labor, bare feet, shackles, in the desert. So it wasn't exactly fun, and I had to do all this work myself. It was really hard. It took me several days to finish it, and then when I came back, she revoked my autonomy. So I'm locked in my cell now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She only comes to the prison once a week to bring supplies right now. So I am in complete solitary confinement. There's no internet here, and it just kind of sucks for that part. And again, she has me in these heavy shackles, as you see here. Also, we're kind of playing with the branding. In Facility 5, I had to put my prisoner ID along the bridge of my left sole. We're kind of playing with this idea of putting my prisoner ID on the arches of my left arch, and then Prison 1, which I did a terrible job. This is the first time I've written on the arches of my feet. I would get thrown in the dungeon if I did this in Facility 5, because it's against policy. It has to be on the bridge. Your foot. The prisoner ID has to be placed along the bridge of your foot. And if you've seen any of my videos, that's where it's at. So we're kind of playing with this. But anyway, so Facility 5 kind of started creating this system of suffering currency, basically. So if you're willing to suffer, you can extend your imprisonment at Facility 5. And they've done this in 2 basic ways. First, this new consolidated confinement with 5 prisoners chained together by their feet in this tiny 4-foot by 8-foot cell. It's incredibly uncomfortable. 3 prisoners was very uncomfortable in the beginning, but you have enough room to move around, and they were also rotating prisoners out every day. Like every day, a prisoner would be removed and a new prisoner would be brought in. So you had this rotating social construct, right? The new one, because we're chained together in groups of 5, they didn't want to do that anymore. So I was literally chained to 4 other prisoners, my bare feet chained to their bare feet, in this really cramped cell, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for weeks at a time, without any change, right? The same prisoners, 24 hours a day for multiple weeks. And it was just torture. I mean, in the previous consolidated confinement, you would adapt to it. You were forced to adapt to it, and then you would actually start liking some of the things about it, right? Like I said, you'd get addicted to the constant contact. I mean, your feet are always touching the feet of other prisoners, 24 hours a day. So when they pull you out of that situation, you lose that dead weight. That feeling when every time you move your foot, you're dragging another prisoner's foot with you, and that constant contact. I mean, it programs your brain to expect that. Anything that's constant, you get used to. And when you leave that, suddenly it's not there anymore, and it really kind of messes with your head. It also creates this foot fetish. I mean, I talked to my counselor, in the prison, and she said that people would come in, they actually hated feet when they came in, and they would leave consolidated confinement with a really strong foot fetish, because our feet were chained closely together, constantly in contact. Originally, it bothered me because there was this whole, germ phobia that I had and stuff, but you get over that when you're chained to 2 other prisoners 24 hours a day in a tight confinement like that. But anyway, beyond that, that's something I actually miss from Facility 5. I do not miss the later version of that with 5 prisoners at all. And that's, like I said, the reason that I left Facility 5. They also created a mandatory hard labor program. It's basically slave labor. They have two programs: a manufacturing program where you build products, and the other one is farm work. I was put on the farm. I didn't like it. And there were certain things about it I did like. When we were chained up at night and they chained us all together. There's 40 prisoners. We were chained by our feet on one chain that was pulled up through loops on posts, so that our chains were suspended. Our feet were still on the ground, so it wasn't really high. But, there were 20 prisoners on one side, 20 prisoners on the other side, and our feet were all chained together in the middle, soul to soul, basically, with the prisoners on the other side, which created a whole other, kind of a normalized thing where, every night, our feet would be really sore from working outside barefoot and shackled. We'd rub the soles of our feet together with the prisoners across from us. And and there's a lot of sexual stuff going on there. There was a co-ed situation where we were chained to male and female prisoners. So there was some good parts about mandatory hard labor, but the hard labor part during the day just didn't work for me. I had a heat exhaustion situation where I passed out. I had to go to the infirmary, and they removed me from the program. They said I was no longer viable for that work. And that meant that the new system of consolidated confinement, which they changed to a system where you had to set a period of time that you'd be down there. I wasn't planning on being in consolidated confinement for a whole year when we signed up for a whole year, right? This is a way for Facility 5 to guarantee that your cell's available, right, for that time period, so they could re-rent it to another prisoner while you were in consolidated confinement. Extending your imprisonment through suffering, basically. And so when I got kicked out of the mandatory hard labor, we were going to have me go in and out of mandatory labor throughout that year so that I would have a break from consolidated confinement. Problem is that when I got kicked out of that was my only option. I was coming back to 11 months in consolidated confinement, and I hated every minute of it. Not only was it miserable in the cells, but they were basically torturing the prisoners. They'd pull us out, do cell inspections, shock the soles of our feet with their little shock baton things. They'd beat us. I mean, it was just, they were just torturing us basically down there. I mean, like I said, suffering points, right? And it just sucked. So I brought up to Amy the idea of building our own prison. She'd still have me as a prisoner, and I could, we could sell my house, we could sell all this stuff, build the prison. I could become a life sentence prisoner, because at my cost of imprisonment now is literally the cost of food. I keep saying we. I don't own anything. Amy owns me, and she owns the prison, right? And that was set up by Facility 5, and she legally owns me. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of a complicated situation. First of all, we signed a lifetime enslavement contract before my imprisonment. When I signed up for Facility 5, they make you sign a 3-part contract, which includes a power of attorney. This power of attorney is a lot of power. It's like basically it was designed for mentally ill people who can't take care of themselves or are a danger to themselves and others generally. And it was also used apparently for committing someone who had a drug problem, right? So there was it's kind of set up so that someone can take guardianship, take custody of another person for their own safety, right, and the safety of others. And it can actually be implemented without your consent, right? I mean, obviously, you can't get someone who's addicted to drugs to sign a paper giving up their freedom, right? And there is strong language in this power of attorney that give legal right for imprisonment, right? And this is why Facility 5 uses it. It was set up by their lawyers, but this power of attorney is between me, Amy, and the government at that point, right? And once I left Facility 5, that doesn't go away. The only way I get out of that power of attorney is if Amy releases me from it, and she'd have to she'd have to submit it to a judge and have it legally removed, basically. So when I say she owns me, she literally owns me, and with legal rights for imprisonment. And that's how Facility 5 works, because it gives her, as the third party, ownership of me, and she's just contracting them for my legal imprisonment, basically. This is my toilet in my cell. Amy couldn't find a new one, so she bought a used one. So this is actually a toilet from a prison that was repurposed at Prison 1. So that's why it's kind of rusty and kind of gross a little bit, but which kind of falls in line with Facility 5, because not all their toilets are brand new either, but it's a similar toilet to this. It's a metal, it's got a sink. I'm sitting on the sink part, I think, in this video. And of course, this is before she put the extra shackles, the punishment shackles on me. But anyway, so here I am. I just got kicked out of mandatory hard labor. See, mandatory hard labor was the best option for extending imprisonment at Facility 5, because while you're in mandatory hard labor, your sentence was paused. So you're not accruing time that you've paid for already. It's paused. On top of that, for every day you serve in this this mandatory hard labor, you're gaining a free day in prison. They're basically paying you in sentence time, basically. So this is perfect for trusted third parties who maybe imprisoned their husband or wife because they cheated on them with the intent of only having them imprisoned for 30 days and then deciding they didn't want them back. Gives them the option to force their prisoners to work for their own imprisonment, to, like I said, suffering currency, right? Which is kind of a shitty thing, but whatever. I wanted to stay in prison, right? So I signed up for this. But when I got kicked out of it, I lost that suffering currency money, right? And I was put into Consolidated Confinement. Now, Consolidated Confinement, the new one, was designed in a way that would also help you extend your imprisonment. They can re-rent your cell. Your sentence is paused. You don't gain any time while you're down there, but you are paying very little. And, so it gives Amy time to come up with more money to pay for future imprisonment while my sentence is paused and I'm suffering in Consolidated Confinement. I didn't want to spend 11 months in Consolidated Confinement with my bare feet chained to the bare feet of 4 other prisoners, 24 hours a day for weeks on end, for the same prisoners, right? So we... at first Amy was against the idea. She actually threatened additional punishment for even bringing it up, because I'm not supposed to be even talking about leaving prison. I'm supposed to be... we were trying to keep me in prison for 20 years. So anyway, eventually she came around. She decided we'd do this. We sold everything. We built this cell. Well, she built the cell with help of others, obviously, while I was still imprisoned. We were working with Facility 5, who had no obligation to release me. I had already signed a contract for a year in Consolidated Confinement. The first month of that was in mandatory hard labor, so I was looking at 11 months left on my contract with them, and possibly more, because the way that works is if the prisoner that takes my cell decides to extend, I get to stay in Consolidated Confinement until they leave my cell, basically. So it was most likely going to be a much longer sentence for me down there, in a very, very uncomfortable, basically torture situation. So what was I saying? So we had to fight Facility 5 to get me out of prison, basically. Like I said, they don't want prisoners leaving the prison, right? We had to give up my 30 free days that I got from hard labor. We had to pay off all my my extension time and some other fees and stuff, right? So that a lot of that money from the house cell and the sell of my stuff went to buying my freedom from Facility 5, because we wanted... Amy not only wanted me out before that 11 months, and I wanted to be out before that 11 months, but we also wanted to be free and clear of Facility 5. If you owe a penny to Facility 5, you go out on parole, and then they own you still. You have to wear these electronic shackles that have GPS, and they connect. There are 2 shackles actually that go around both ankles, and they connect through like a little short-range Bluetooth connection or whatever, so the technology or the electronics in each shackle can communicate across. And you have to pay a monitoring fee every month until you're paid up, basically. So we didn't... I'm going to a new prison. We didn't want that baggage of Facility 5 dictating and sending parole officers to the prison to check up on me and all that other crap. And we didn't want to have that payment going out, and I was looking at years in parole, basically, based on what I owed. So we decided to pay them off. I mean, we had a bunch of money from the cell and everything, and we kind of, we didn't really budget things, or Amy didn't budget things as well as we had hoped. But so we paid a lot of money to Facility 5 to buy my freedom, right? When I got here, my cell wasn't built yet because there was some problems sourcing, labor, and I ended up spending a month chained up in a shipping container with a mattress and a bucket for a toilet. So it wasn't the funnest experience getting out, going from a purely 24-hour social situation to being complete solitary confinement and chained up in a metal box in the desert. Finally, my cell came, and it's an awesome cell. I was really excited. I got put in this cell, and I've been in this cell for 3 months, and as you can tell from the previous clips, I've kind of cluttered it with a bunch of stuff from my previous life before my imprisonment. Again, I've been imprisoned for, I've been barefoot and shackled for over 3.5 years now. I was imprisoned at Facility 5 for more than 2.5 years, or roughly 2.5 years, I believe. During that 2.5 years, I spent over 1.5 years in consolidated confinement. Okay, so I've been through a lot until I got here. Now, things are good and bad here. Like, first of all, I'm in solitary confinement. When I started this project, I was not a social butterfly. You don't commit to shackling your bare feet and imprisoning yourself in your house for months on end if you have a major social life, right? So I was pretty much a loner before I started this project. But in prison, I had to adapt to a very social situation, especially when your bare feet are chained to the bare feet of 2 other prisoners in a cramped space 24 hours a day. You really exercise your social skills, right? And it becomes so normalized that you feel, even when I got put back in my cell, I was technically in solitary confinement because there's no other prisoner in my cell, but I had the community network, the prison community network. So I still had an outlet to talk to friends. We shared videos. We did video chat, pictures, all that stuff. And there was a lot of prisoners in the prison community network posting pictures and, chatting and stuff like that. So I had that connection to the community, even though I was in solitary confinement, which was still hard right after getting out of consolidated confinement. But this is a whole nother level, going from having my bare feet chained to the bare feet of 4 other prisoners 24/7, going to an empty cell where I'm chained up and I have no outside contact at all. Was really kind of a mind fuck. Yeah, it sucked. And it still sucks because, I'm out here alone. Amy only comes out once a week to bring food and stuff like that to me. And I am here in solitary confinement with no internet. So it sucks during the week. Of course, we're trying to get internet here. So that's going to be worked out eventually. So that's my life up till now. 3.5 years shackled, barefoot, and for the majority of that imprisoned, and prior to that enslaved. So I'm owned by Amy, just as the prison is owned by Amy, and she's made it very clear that this is a life sentence, and I've agreed to that. Not that she needed my agreement, but at this point, these shackles, which are welded on, are never coming off, and I will be living in this cell for the rest of my life, basically. And I'm not complaining. That's, like I said, that's one of the good points, because I was suffering to stay in prison at Facility 5, and now I have junk food. Amy's a sweetheart. She buys me whatever I want as far as food and stuff. I get junk food. I got soda. I got vodka. While I lost the social aspect and I don't have internet, I can get to look at porn that I have on my hard drive, movies, TV shows, play video games, get drunk, eat junk food. So as far as my quality of life, it's gone up considerably since Facility 5, since I was literally slave labor in Facility 5. I had no money for commissary. The only time I ever got junk food and stuff was when my rich prisoner friend visited my cell and brought all that commissary money with him. So anyway, back to Prison 1. I was very, very excited about Prison 1. Prison 1 is right now just one cell, and we plan to expand it. We're working on designing and building the first cell block A, which we're terming the Fishbowl, and I'll tell you why in a minute here. We're going to also have luxury cells eventually. This is the first luxury cell in a line of luxury cells in the future, far future. This is cell block C, technically, the first cell in cell block C. We're going to have a cell block A, and then we have a slightly more private cell block B. And I'll, like I said, fishbowl. I'll tell you about it. First, we got to get internet. We're trying to keep the cost of imprisonment as low as possible. So we're on renewable energy. We have solar. We have a good solar setup here right now. Lots of batteries and stuff, and we're going to be expanding that as we grow the prison further. We have to have water delivered because it is the desert, but water's not too expensive, at least as it isn't for now. So we're keeping the cost low, and we'll have gigabit fiber internet coming here. So long-term prisoners can get work-at-home jobs. I'm expected to get a work-at-home job. Amy's already said that once the internet's hooked up, I'm going to be working for my imprisonment here. I'm going to have my own prison job, being that I'm going to be getting a work-from-home job on the internet to pay for my imprisonment and also fund, the expansion, basically. So we're going to plan this in 2 stages. There's going to be basically prison 1 is the prison, but we're going to have 2 basic events. And this one I'm going to talk about now is new. It's still in the works. We're not sure how it's going to work yet or if it's going to even happen. But the first stage of this event is going to be prison labor camp. So we're going to have a prison labor camp with a small number of prisoners who want to come help build the prison, basically. It'll be a chain gang situation. It's not going to be comfortable. There's no prison cell for you with a nice bunk. You're going to be sleeping on the floor of a shipping container chained together, floor bolted to the floor. At night, anyway. During the day, it's going to be a chain gang situation where, depending on how many prisoners we have, we're probably only going to be buddying up prisoners. That means that you'll be chained by your ankle to the ankle of another prisoner the whole time you're here, right? Which is going to be a short period. We're talking like 1 week for this event, maybe 2 weeks at the very most. I doubt we'll carry it to 2 weeks. We might have multiple events where we have multiple prison labor camp events where we do some stuff the first event and then we prepare, get more equipment, get things set up and ready for the next event to have more prisoners come in and help us build the prison, basically. This is a view from under my desk at Prison 1. On the right-hand side, you can see the monitor that's concealed behind the plexiglass in the wall. That's different than Facility 5 in one way, really. You can't really tell from this view, but the monitor is in a wide aspect ratio, 21:9 aspect ratio, just like Facility 5, and it's behind really thick plexiglass. But the plexiglass in Facility 5 had a metal frame around it that mounted it to the wall. As you can see in the top right corner here, it's just connected by corners, the 4 corners to hold that plexiglass in place, and the monitors behind it inside the wall. Above that is the is the speakers. There's stereo speakers above the monitor, and that was the same as the Facility 5, except in Facility 5 they had a metal mesh over it, so it was you couldn't access the speakers. This one just has the regular one that came with it, the little cover. I can actually pull it off, and there's a little button in there that changes something. But anyway, this is my feet on the plexiglass desk in my prison cell of Prison 1 at this point. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, prison labor camp. So prison labor camp will have prisoners come to the Las Vegas airports. You'll fly in. We don't have a prison transport vehicle, and we'll probably have to transport everybody en masse, so you'll come to Vegas. You might want to come a little early, get some gambling in, see the sights, whatever. And then we'll all be scheduled to meet up at one place, and then we'll probably get everybody into prison uniform and shackled up, chained together, and put in a probably like a U-Haul van or something like that to transport all the prisoners to the prison. Once you're here, we'll do the final processing and stuff, get everybody ready, chained to their partners, and we'll start working. And this is going to be slave labor work. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be like clearing weeds, leveling the land for to place the first cell block A down, and it's going to be hard work. And it's if you're into the whole chain gang thing and imprisonment and enslavement in this case, you might want to consider signing up to that if it ever comes to fruition. I'm not sure it's going to happen yet. This is all based on the fact that I was originally going to do all the work, and I just don't think I can do it all by myself, right? So I'm going to need some help, and we might as well, get some footage from this, and pun intended, footage, since we're going to probably be focusing on prisoners shackled bare feet as they work. We could use some of that footage to promote the prison camp. That's the regular event that's going to be happening twice a year at Prison 1. And that's also the only way you can get into Prison 1 if you want long-term imprisonment. You have to attend prison camp. So, just before we go into that, though, so what we're going to do is we're going to build cell block A out of 3 40-foot shipping containers. We're going to weld them together side by side, so it makes one big room. We're going to cut out the corrugated steel walls on the interior. The middle container will be like the hallway, and the outer containers will be the cells. And we'll be reusing that corrugated steel to make the walls of those cells, to separate, the cells. There's going to be 6 cells on each side, so 12 cells totally in this 40-foot container. Not very big cells, but you'll have the front of the cells going to be plexiglass and steel frame. Welded steel frame, so it'll be secure, but it's the fishbowl. That's why we're calling it the fishbowl, because when you look out the plexiglass front of your cell, you're going to be able to see all the prisoners on the other side of the hallway, right? This cell is going to be fully equipped. It'll have a toilet, a metal toilet / sink combo like the one you saw me standing on in the previous clip. It's going to have a wall-mounted desk. It's very similar to the one I have in my cell, but much shorter, much smaller. And we're going to embed a display under the plexiglass. It's all going to be sealed from underneath, so you won't have access to any of the equipment inside the desk. And we're going to mount one of those heavy-duty metal keyboards. And I'm not sure about the trackpad, or they make a metal trackball, which I'm not really a fan of. Or we might just hand out, wireless mice to prisoners. Cheap ones that if they break, it's not going to break the bank. So these terminals will have internet access, high-speed gigabit internet. And that's another thing. There's going to be a webcam also, so you can stay in touch with friends and family. But it's going to be angled properly underneath the plexiglass. You won't be able to, violate the privacy of other prisoners. They'll be able to see you sitting at your desk, or if you stand on the desk, like you see now, they'll have a view like this, because your shackled bare feet will be over the camera. So, anyway, if that's what you want to do, that'll be an option for you. There's going to be a bunk in there, and it's going to be mounted on the wall. We're pairing the cells up, and that's why we're having 6 cells. So the first 2 cells, the bunks will be on the same wall, basically. So when you're laying in your bunk, there'll be another prisoner on the other side of the wall laying on his bunk. And at night, Amy she really gets turned on by the whole consolidated confinement thing where my feet were chained to the feet of other prisoners. She wants to do that specifically during prison camp, where she wants to chain prisoners' ankles together, their feet together while they're in the bunks, through that system where you're laying side by side. Your feet will be through the slot at the bottom. Then we might be implementing some kind of stocks, ankle stocks or something there, or we might just have a pair of ankle cuffs that are suspended by a welded loop to the center beam, and we just shackle one ankle to the other ankle, right? So that's going to be just one of the things we're thinking about. The above the bunk, because we want prisoners' feet to be through the slot, basically. So the bunk's going to be kind of shortened, and the head of the bunk will be shelves, so you can put personal things there and stuff like that. And the floor is going to be concrete. We are carrying over the footprint authentication panels from Facility 5, except we won't have the ability to make those fully functional like they are in Facility 5. Facility 5, a prisoner stands barefoot, and that's why we're all barefoot in Facility 5, on the glass panel, and the view would be similar to this, what you're seeing right now, with the camera underneath a two-way mirror and other equipment to scan the soles of prisoners' bare feet. It first starts with a shape identification. That's why our feet are all stained, along our footprints, so that the system can see the basic shape of our footprints and match it in the system, and then it scans your actual footprints, right? And it can match the footprints to all the scans that match your footprint shape, right? So that's why all our feet are stained black like this, because it allows the footprint authentication to do that first scan, the shape identification, before actually matching footprints. And so that's how that works, but we're not going to have that system in the beginning. I mean, that's going to take a lot of programming. We're going to have to create our own footprint authentication system. In the beginning, though, we are going to implement that. So every cell is going to have a footprint authentication panel in front of and behind the cell door. So with the idea that, you know, we can automate release of prisoners if you have to go to the shower cell, or if you have to go to work at prison labor. You'll be scheduled, you'll be ordered to stand on the footprint authentication panel in your cell, in front of your cell door. That will identify you by your footprints. Eventually, the door will unlock. You'll step outside on the panel on the other side. And so the computer knows that you're now out, your feet are now out of your cell. And then you would close and lock the door behind you. And then it would track you at every security point by, you know, scanning the soles of your bare feet. Anyway. That aside, that's not going to be fully functional, but they will be implemented. You will have a glass panel in the floor with a two-way mirror. And Amy wants cameras in there so that it can be monitored manually. So she'll be able to see your feet, just like you're seeing mine right now, on the panel when you step on it. She also wants to implement the toe people contest that we had in Facility 5. So instead of my toes being just filthy, they would have little smiley faces on them right now. And we'll get that'll enter you into the contest to win, you know, prizes or, you know, commissary money or whatever. This is actually from Facility 5. This was shot with my girlfriend in Facility 511 before I went. She was in my cell like for a few days before I went to mandatory hard labor, and that's literally the last time I've ever saw her, spoken to her. Unfortunately, when you leave Facility 5, any relationships you've made in Facility 5 during your imprisonment is no longer. Like, you're not allowed to contact prisoners in the prison unless you were added to their list before your imprisonment. And I do have one prisoner left that I am in contact with Facility 5, so I've been updating that. And again, you haven't seen a video on YouTube in a long time, but I've been posting every single week at patreon.com/facility5. So if you want to follow the whole story, you know, my whole life in prison and all that stuff, it's all over there. Also, we're taking comments on, you know, how we should implement certain things at Prison 1. So you might actually have a hand in, you know, determining how imprisonment's going to be at Prison 1. So once we get the prison built, the only way into the prison is through the event. And it's going to be a biannual. That means twice a year. One of those months is going to be October. It's going to be for 30 days. That's the event time. If you can't make it the whole 30 days, you have a job or whatever, you can arrange for early release. But you have to pay for the event, right? We can't have people saying, oh, I'm only going to be there for 3 days. We need to build the fucking prison, right? So, and that's going to be, you know, the pre-sale of these tickets for prison camp. Prison camp's going to be 30 days long, and it's going to be full of, you know, special activities and stuff. We're going to have chain gang games and stuff like that, where we'll be chaining, you know, left versus right. It'll be like 6 prisoners versus 6 prisoners on a chain gang, and, you know, we'll have special, you know, things that we'll be doing, and it's just movie night. There's going to be all kinds of really cool things that we do, and during October we'll be decorating the prison with a bunch of Halloween stuff. It's going to be super fun. We'll be changing the lighting in there and stuff at night to be more spooky, I guess, and we'll just do a lot of really cool stuff during October. The next one will probably be in March, because we don't want to have, you know, the heat from the desert. It's not that bad here. I haven't really spent a summer here yet, but from what I've looked into history, it doesn't get that hot here, so it's not that big of a deal. But we're thinking like March, maybe April for the other event. So twice a year, you'll be able to come to Prison 1, and that will give you the option to go long term. So when you come for prison labor, not prison labor, but prison camp, just the regular event, you will be able to sign on for a year of long-term imprisonment. We're going with a year because, I mean, you'd sign a contract, a lease contract for an apartment, right? So, you know, and you might, yeah. Anyway, and we're going to make imprisonment, long-term imprisonment here, very cheap. I'm talking, we don't have a high overhead. We're going to hire a prison guard, basically an administrator that keeps track of, brings stuff to the prison and make sure that I stay in prison while I'm doing prison labor work. I'm going to be the head PLW at the beginning. Amy's also made that clear that no job is permanent. So once we get a number of long-term prisoners here, you will have the chance to be the head PLW, and I will go back to being a regular prisoner. And the idea of this is to minimize the chance of abuse, right? Power goes to your head. I've seen this happen in Facility 5 many times, over and over again. A new PLW will come in, they'll be really reluctant to implement punishments, and then as soon as they get used to whacking the soles of your feet with a plastic rod, they take it further, right? And they become sadistic, basically. So this way, it's like treat others as you would like to be treated, basically. You're a prison labor worker, you're in charge of the prisoners, you can implement punishments at your leisure, but you're not going to, because you know that the person that you're going to be abusing is going to be in charge of you eventually, right? And you don't want to be abused. Anyway, so that's going to be how it is. I'm not going to be PLW. I'm not going to be God of the prison. It's just going to be, at the beginning, I'm the only one that can do it. So I'll be the first PLW. Anyway, 30 days is the event period, and we hope you can stay the whole 30 days because we're reserving that cell for you, and we're going to be paying extra for all these special, event things and, special activities and all that shit. But you don't have to stay, but you will have to pay for the whole event. It's an event price. We can't have people just saying, I'll be there for 3 days, because then the prison will never get built, right? And we need to pre-sell those event pricing. But after that, we're going to make it real easy for you to stay, okay? You don't even have to have money up front, probably. This is still being worked out, but all you would have to basically do is sign and footprint the extension contract, and you are going to stay in prison for a year, and it would work out the payment later. We're going to keep cost of imprisonment really low. Like, we don't have an exact price yet, but because the cost of imprisonment is so low for us, basically food at this point, we'll have solar power, free energy. Of course, we'll have to pay for the internet, but after that's been paid for to bring it here and everything, the monthly cost for that's going to be minimal. So we'll have to pay the security guard, but then the prison labor will be handled by prisoners, so we don't really have to hire a bunch of staff or anything for that. And the cost of this property, to maintain this property, is practically nothing. It's in the middle of nowhere, right? So we're going to try to pass that savings on to the prisoners. Of course, we have to have some money in the bank for emergencies. Say a hailstorm knocks out our entire solar panel system and we have to buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of solar panels. We need to have that on hand, right? But eventually, once we get enough money in the bank and, everything's built and, we don't have to worry about expenses, we're going to pass on that savings to the long-term prisoners. Also, we're using the events to kind of subsidize that as well, because it's not going to be really cheap to come for the event. It's, we have special activities and stuff as well, but that's going to kind of subsidize the long-term imprisonment. We'll also be doing a vlog from the prison. It'll be like showing the lives of the long-term prisoners on a weekly basis, and that's going to be a subscription-based vlog, basically. So that'll help pay for some of the imprisonment as well. So basically, it's going to be real easy for you to become a life prisoner, just like I am in Prison 1. You'll just sign the paper, and you're guaranteed imprisonment for a year, even if you don't pay. And we'll be encouraging you. There might be some punishments involved if you're not, getting a home job to pay, or getting someone outside to kind of pay your way that you've agreed to pay for that imprisonment. But we'll be offering like prison labor work. You'll be able to, subsidize your imprisonment through prison labor, and stuff like that, right? Also, we're talking about behavior points, because we don't want a bunch of jerks living here. We want to build a strong, solid prison community where we can all get along and make friends and have a good time here, right? So if you're a jerk, then you're probably going to be paying full price and you won't be invited back. And if you're a real jerk, then you might end up spending the rest of your sentence in a punishment cell, away from everybody else, right? And we're not going to allow people that misbehave to come back to the prison, and that goes for the events too. The prison labor or the prison camp. If you're a jerk and you're gonna cause trouble, then we'll just put you in a solitary confinement cell, and you won't come back to the prison. But on the other side of that coin, if you are well liked by the prisoners and you're really kind of boosting morale and you're helping out and with the prison labor and stuff like that, and people like you and you're really bringing something to the prison, we can do that on the back end where we give you behavior points to subsidize your imprisonment while you're here, so the cost of imprisonment. So like I said, all utilities are pretty much paid for up front before you even get here. We own, the solar panels and all that stuff and the batteries. And then basically it just comes to meals. And if we're buying food in bulk, then it brings the price down for that too. So and just remember, the cost of imprisonment is going to be probably less than you could find the cheapest apartment for, right? We're talking roommate level rent here, okay? And it includes everything. All utilities, 3 meals a day, internet, clothing, and your cell basically. So like I said, we're not doing this for profit. We're not doing this to get rich. We just want to build a really solid prison community, a long-term prison community. So yeah, and we're pretty much set up as far as amenities go now. We have 21,000 watts of battery right now, and I think our panels are way overkill. I think we're pulling in like 5,000 or 6,000 watts during the day. So again, we're going to be running LED lights in the prison, and the computers that we put in there are going to be little nooks or something, a low powered system. They'll be good enough to play like some games and stuff, so you'll play games in your cell, but they're not going to be like 500 750 watt power supplies with heavy duty GPUs or anything like that. So we should be able, to be honest, we probably have enough power now to accommodate that. I'm actually heating my cell with electric. That's how much electric you have. And if you know anything about electric heat, it's fucking, it uses a lot of power, 1,500 watts, just to turn it on. So it shouldn't be a problem. But we'll be expanding that as well, as well as internet. And like I said, once I get internet, I have to get a work-at-home job. Amy's mandated that. I'm going to have to pay for my imprisonment through that job as well as fund the expansion of the prison. Basically, I'm going to be paying more for imprisonment than you because my entire paycheck goes to Amy, while yours, you might have some left over for buying commissary stuff. And we're going to allow some stuff, you might be able to order stuff from Amazon to your cell and things like that, with certain limitations, of course. But anyway, it's really exciting. I'm really excited to get this going. And as I said before, we're not posting to YouTube anymore. So if you want to follow this, you'll have to go to patreon.com/facility5. And not only will you see future videos, but you'll see all the videos I've been posting for the past year too. So like I said, that I haven't been slacking. Just because you haven't seen a video on YouTube doesn't mean I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not a prisoner anymore. I'm not posting videos. They're all being posted to Patreon. And that was mostly to fund my imprisonment at Facility 5, and now it's basically buying my groceries and funding the build of Prison 1. So it's really important that we get as much money as we can so that we can get this going. As I said, we're out of money at this point. We took that money we sold the house with. Amy put 1 year's worth of rent into a luxury apartment for her and her little slave girl, a 2-bedroom. And we built this prison cell. We bought all the infrastructure to make it work. So we got power, the panels, the batteries were fucking expensive as hell. Lithium iron phosphate, very expensive batteries, but they'll last forever, and they'll do what we need them to do. Now we're basically out of money. The only money we have right now is to fund the internet, which is going to have to be dragged. They're going to have to bury lines for many, many, many miles, and they're making us pay for it. So it's not going to be cheap to get internet here, but it's mandatory. We cannot run the prison without internet. So so basically the last of our money right now is being tied up for the expectation of that internet costing pretty much all of it. Okay. The Patreon is literally funding my imprisonment now. Like my cost of imprisonment is food, and that goes to groceries. Basically, it's the money that I'm getting from Patreon. Any overage is going to go towards infrastructure and building the prison. So, like I said, we're not here to rip people off. We just want to get this prison built and get a community working. Yeah. So, as this title says, I've been shackled and barefoot for over 3.5 years now. I've been in prison for 2.5 years. A year and a half of that spent in consolidated confinement, and now 3 months in prison at Prison 1 when at the time of this recording, and with a life sentence ahead of me, both with the shackles, the bare feet, and imprisonment. Since Prison 1 is a barefoot prison, never going to wear shoes again. The shackles that are on my ankles right now that you see in this video are welded on. They're never coming off. And the cell that I'm in right now is going to be where I live for the rest of my life. Hopefully. Amy has expressed interest in moving me to the fishbowl. If we don't get enough prisoners signed up, I might be moved to the fishbowl during the events. She might even do something where, if another prisoner becomes her favorite, she might move me to the fishbowl and move that prisoner into my cell. And since we only have one luxury cell right now, it might become sort of like the vacation for prisoners, long-term prisoners, right? And that would suck for me. But like I said, she owns me. She owns the prison. I have no choices. If she decides to do that, then I'll be in the fishbowl. And she might use that as punishment too. I don't know. Like, for me anyway. Because that would be punishment. I love my cell. I don't want to leave it. But anyways, let me make sure I'm covering everything. That's about it. The prison's going to be co-ed. So if you're female and you want to come to prison, just be known that you're going to be in the fishbowl when you get here. And the first cell block's going to be plexiglass. We are going to have strict rules on conduct. We're not going to allow prisoners to be jerking off, at the window. If you can jerk off, I mean, that's fine, but it has to be concealed, right? Either under your covers of your bunk or facing your toilet, facing the back wall so people can't see you doing it. I mean, they'll see that you're doing it either way, but it won't be like, in their face, basically. We have to have pretty strict social constructs in this situation so that you're not affecting other prisoners in their cells in a negative way, right? And there'll be punishments, of course, for violating these rules and stuff. We're actually talking about bringing the whole from Facility 5, and that's the really harsh punishment. It's basically torture. But non-lethal or anything, so you'll be safe in there. It's just going to be really claustrophobic and really scary. I've been in the hole at Facility 5, and it was not fun. We'll implement long-term stocks as a punishment. Lashes, that means the plastic rod will be used on the soles of your bare feet if you misbehave, which is excruciatingly painful, but then again, not anything that's going to cause any long-term injury. In fact, most of the time you'll have a red mark on your sole for an hour or two. There will be punishment cells, and once we grow bigger and we have more prisoners, there's going to be, probably consolidated confinement as well. Not only just to create that from Facility 5, but also because we're probably not going to have a lot of punishment cells, right? And we might have to pack multiple prisoners into one punishment cell if we get that many misbehaving prisoners. But anyway, that's it. Go to Patreon, catch up with the previous videos there, and follow this project that we're working on now. This is probably going to be a long, drawn-out project, probably going to take us a year, maybe 2 at the most. But it is going to happen. Regardless of outside help, I'm going to get a work-at-home job, and I'll fund it myself if it has to come down to it. I'll just have to build it little by little. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next week. Or actually, you won't unless you're over at Patreon. I'm not going to be posting more videos here. Thanks for watching.